Well, we've known each. Well, actually, I came across you in New Wine, and I was still a policeman in 2008, 9, maybe 10, and you were doing the Bible readings in the morning in the trendy venue too, and they were just incredible. And then we met over dinner at Wiston Estate, and yeah, just want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, Will. That's great.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, great. That was a good fun time actually at New Wine.
Yeah.
So I'm Will van der Hart. I'm a pastoral chaplain at Holy Trinity Brompton in London. I've been a priest for 16 years, and always in the City of London. And I specialise in pastoral work, but also particularly in mental and emotional health care. And in 2005, started a charity with a couple of friends of mine, which is called the Mind and Soul Foundation, which you might have come across, which really focuses on Christian spirituality and mental and emotional health issues. Rob is a consultant psychiatrist, Kate is a psychologist, and together we kind of merge this whole idea of actually faith, psychology and psychiatry, and how can we help Christians do better with their mental health effectively. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So I never expected to get involved in this kind of ministry. When I was training for ministry, I thought I was going to be a sports evangelist.
Oh wow.
But then, yeah, like you, Steve, I was wrapped up in the London bombings, the 7/7 bombings, and I suffered an anxiety-based breakdown as a result of my involvement in the sort of recovery process. And so I had a steep learning curve as far as mental health was concerned, but also started asking theological questions about why I was struggling, particularly with my faith, in terms of my integrated recovery approach.
Oh yeah, yeah, amazing. Yeah, because I think one of the things I love about you, well, many things, but it's your vulnerability and openness, which I think when we went to Focus this year, you were the highlight, your strand. You know, when people came back to our camp in St. John's, you were the highlight with the different speakers you had. And actually, you know, I was lucky enough to do one with Johnny Sutherland. And you've been able to give church leaders and church people a vocabulary to talk around mental health and to admit things like, yeah, I was on citalopram when I had my breakdown in 2007. And, you know, rather than being a stigma, that's like, oh, actually, that gave us an approach, an ability to talk about medication and to say that's a good thing in church. And it gives you time to breathe and just lots of different vocabs and conversations that we wouldn't have generally had. And they were the best conversations around our fire pit at night, was really people being really open and honest. Because I don't know about you, I've got a series of questions that the congregation has sent in to me that would be great to cover first of all, and then just to see where you feel that we should be pressing into as individuals in this lockdown. I loved your article recently about seeing it as an interruption about Bonhoeffer and the Good Samaritan and how he had an interruption, and actually this is an interruption. And we had Pete Winter, who's a friend of both of us, last week, speaking about this being an interruption for an invitation to be intimate with God. And yeah, he's a great preacher, and he had those three eyes.
He's a great preacher, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the questions was asked was, why is mental health such an issue nowadays in comparison to times gone by, and why particularly men's mental health? This was asked by Kevin Hawkes.
Sure. It's great. It's a great question, Steve. I mean, statistically, there hasn't been a massive change in the prevalence of mental health in the main and the plain. So if you divide mental health up, we have what we call serious and enduring disorders. They are sort of more serious and life-limiting disorders in terms of the impact that they have on you and the need for maybe more long-term medication. And then we have what we call the neurotic disorders. They're disorders that are more common in society, particularly things like depression and anxiety. And actually, the serious enduring disorders haven't massively changed over the years. They've remained relatively static. Only sort of extreme cannabis use has really seen more of those. Within the neurotic zone, again, largely, but certainly before COVID, things were relatively stable. But amongst older age groups and also in younger people, we've seen an increasing prevalence of particularly anxiety and depression. And there is a danger in coining the sort of mental health epidemic kind of language, I think what we are seeing, helpfully, is a significant increase in the number of people getting diagnoses and help and getting treatment. And certainly up to sort of 2010, before the Time to Change campaign, there was so much stigma attached to mental health that lots of people just weren't getting any treatment. So we had a huge amount of undiagnosed conditions in society. Men have been particularly bad at coming forward to acknowledge their struggles, and they've been using lots and lots of forms of self-medication to support themselves, particularly alcohol, but also, also drugs, gambling, pornography, but also the kind of male gang culture idea where, you hide in a bigger group. It might be at football matches, or it might be in sports settings, or it might be actually in real gangs. But the idea of sort of expressing your emotions in different, maybe discordant ways. And so men have struggled, and men are struggling in new ways now. Not all of them are sort of socially acceptable in terms of how we talk about them, but certainly men's sense of identity has been in something of a crisis over the last 15 years, and men sort of struggling, many men saying they're struggling to understand their place in society, their responsibility in the home, their responsibility in the place of work. And so we are going through a significant social change in our culture, which I think is a good thing. But I think a lot of men are struggling to kind of then understand themselves in the context of that culture. And that's tending to propagate some of their, particularly their sense of depression or anxiety about the present, about the future. So, that's a little broad brushstroke. I mean, I think the key markers for me are that the suicide statistics are pretty frightening around men, that male suicide statistics continue to increase, whereas female statistics have dropped significantly since 2007. And suicide is still the biggest killer of men under 50, bigger than heart disease, bigger than RTAs. And so, there's a lot of work to do in mental health across the board, but particularly where male mental health is concerned.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's fascinating, because that's really, I think we sometimes think mental toughness is carrying on regardless as a man. And actually, I've learned that the hard way personally, that mental toughness is putting your hand up and saying, I need help. And men won't do it. It's that classic story, isn't it, of going to the doctors, and you go to the doctors and you're just walking out the door and you go, oh, by the way, doctor, I've got this lump. And it's just, it's just seen as mental weakness. It's just saying, I'm hoping. And
Absolutely. That's a massive bridge to cross, is the acknowledgement, willingness to be vulnerable. That's something that we're really working on, try and help people to be a bit more vulnerable, a bit more real, a bit more connected to their emotions.